If you're an established business, it is so important to have a business continuity and a disaster recovery plan. They are actually two separate things, but often they dovetail into the same. No one wants to have a disaster in their business, but if you do get one, if you've got a plan, the impact will be so much smaller. So what is a disaster recovery plan? Well, this can be a disaster in any form. With Syn-Star, we focus on the technology of a business. So imagine you don't have a certain type of technology that your company relies on. Will the business continue to run? And how will it continue? And for how long can it continue to run whilst you fix, replace the technology that has gone down? Obviously, there are other disasters that can happen within a business. The building, there could be an earthquake, multiple things. But today we're talking about the technology disaster recovery plan. There's three different elements of IT that you need to understand and have in your disaster recovery plan. The first one is the endpoint side of things. This is your PC, your Mac, your laptop, the devices that the users use. If they fail, what happens? Making sure that there's no data stored specifically on an individual device. Then you've got your network and connectivity. That includes whether your internet, so that's an outside provider that you'll need to find out what their time frame is for fixing things, but your internal, so routers, switches, do you have replacement parts? How old and unreliable is the network? And then the third side is your data, your main server. If you've got an in-house server, it's relatively easy to write a disaster recovery plan. If you're using someone else's, so Microsoft 365 and SharePoint or Azure, then you'll need to find out what their disaster recovery plan and timeframes are. But also you can then make sure that you're backing up those, because part of the disaster recovery plan might be if someone deletes a bunch of files that were important, can you get them back and for how long for? Standard might be 30 days, but you might want to back up for 7 years. If you're, say for example, an insurance agent or an accountant, you need to do certain things with data for an amount of time to tick the box in your compliance. And then finally, once you've gone through and audited exactly everything that's going to be in the IT disaster recovery plan, you then need to work out what your risk is. An example being a backup. A lot of backups just run once a day. Now that's pretty fine, pretty standard. But if you have a disaster at the end of the day, you may lose a whole day's worth of work. Now that could be acceptable, which is fine. Write that in the disaster recovery plan. But if it's not, you then know that you need to change how often the backups run. Is there a reason why they only run once a day? So all of these things then enable you to fully understand where your risk is. And that's the beauty of having a full disaster recovery plan. Every element you can just write down nice and easy. Here's what the hardware is. This is the time frame that it will take to get it back up and running. Is that acceptable? If it's not, let's look at changing that hardware or the backup around that hardware. Then the last element of the disaster recovery process is your team, understanding where they play a part. So if they're not fully trained with cyber awareness training and testing, then there's a very high chance that they could potentially create a disaster that could be avoided. So don't be left behind without having a disaster recovery plan or having one that just doesn't have the detail. We've helped many businesses like yours create a really good, robust disaster recovery plan that should last the business. So please click on the link. We'd love to discuss how Syn-Star can help your business create a disaster recovery plan.